Have you ever wondered what God really expects from you? It sounds like a simple question, but it carries immense depth. Imagine discovering that the secret to a fulfilling and meaningful life lies hidden in something you may have never considered deeply. Controversial? Maybe. But what if I told you that God has clear and specific expectations for each of us, and that these expectations can completely transform your life? It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? After all, many think that faith is just about believing and waiting. But here's the big revelation: God expects you to live in a way that challenges common logic, that goes beyond the ordinary, and that places you on a path of purpose and fulfillment. Curious to discover how this could be the key to an immediate transformation in your life? Let's explore it together. The divine purpose for your life. The divine purpose for each person's life is like a beacon guiding us through the darkness. It's not something easily found, but rather a continuous journey of discovery and growth. Picture a gardener who, after planting a tree, tends to it every day, watering and pruning it, patiently waiting for it to grow and bear fruit. Our lives are similar as we seek our purpose. Every action, every decision brings us closer to the plan God has for us. When we align our actions with the divine purpose, we find peace and direction, even in the most challenging moments. Finding this purpose often requires introspection and humility. It's necessary to hear God's voice amidst the noise of the world. Think of Moses, who was called to free his people from Egypt. He was just a shepherd, but God saw a leader in him. Moses accepted his calling and fulfilled a greater purpose. Similarly, in seeking our purpose, we must be open to God's voice, ready to obey even when the path seems uncertain. It's this obedience that leads us to true fulfillment. The divine purpose also involves serving others and making a positive difference in the world. It's not just about finding personal satisfaction but impacting others' lives in a meaningful way. A practical example is volunteer work. By dedicating time and resources to help those in need, we are fulfilling part of our purpose. Whether through simple actions like visiting a nursing home, helping at a charity, or even offering a comforting word to someone going through difficulties, these actions reflect God's love and bring us closer to the purpose He has for each of us. Loving God above all else. Loving God above all else is the first and greatest commandment. This love is not just an emotion but a daily decision to put God first in our lives. Imagine an athlete who tirelessly dedicates themselves to training with discipline and focus to achieve Olympic gold. In the same way, our love for God should be demonstrated through our choices and priorities. Putting God first means seeking His will in every area of our lives, from major decisions to the small day-to-day actions. This love is reflected in our worship and devotion. It's in moments of prayer, in reading the Bible, and in fellowship with other believers that we strengthen our relationship with God. Think of David, a man after God's own heart. He wasn't perfect, but his love for God was evident in his songs and prayers. David constantly sought God's presence and depended on Him for guidance. So, as we dedicate time and effort to draw closer to God, we show our love and dependence on Him. Loving God also means fully trusting Him, even when we face challenges. Faith is the foundation of this love. For example, when we go through financial difficulties, instead of despairing, we should remember that God is our provider. We can practice this love by trusting that He will take care of us, like a father cares for his children. This gives us strength and hope to face any adversity. It is this unwavering love that sustains us and gives us the certainty that we are under divine protection. Pursuing holiness and obedience to God. Pursuing holiness and obedience to God is a call to live a life that reflects divine values and principles. It's like an artist who dedicates themselves to perfecting their work, carefully attending to every detail with precision and love. Similarly, pursuing holiness is a continuous process of improvement, where we strive to distance ourselves from sin and draw closer to God. This involves making daily decisions that honor God, even when it's not the easiest or most popular choice. Holiness is manifested in our conduct and character. Think of Daniel, who, even in a foreign land, maintained his faith and obedience to God. He refused to be contaminated by pagan practices and remained faithful, even when threatened with being thrown into the lion's den. The pursuit of holiness requires courage and determination so that we can live according to biblical principles, even when it means going against the current. This commitment to holiness is a powerful way to witness God's love and grace in our lives. Obedience to God is the practical expression of our faith. When we follow God's commandments, we show that we trust in His wisdom and love. A practical example of this is tithing. By setting aside a portion of our income for God's work, we are obeying a biblical principle and demonstrating our trust in Him as our provider. Additionally, obedience extends to loving our neighbor, helping those in need, and living a life of integrity. It is through this obedience that we experience the fullness of the life God has planned for us. And before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like. Serving others with humility. Serving others with humility is one of the pillars of Christianity. Jesus gave us the greatest example of service by washing the disciples' feet. He showed us that true greatness lies in serving, not in being served. Imagine a leader who, instead of just giving orders, works side by side with his team, showing care and respect for each member. Our service should be like that, done with love, humility, and dedication, without expecting recognition or reward. Humility in service is reflected in our daily attitudes. Think of small gestures that can make a big difference, like offering help to a coworker, listening to someone who needs to vent, or even doing household chores without complaining. These acts of service demonstrate our love for God and for our neighbor. When we serve with humility, we follow Christ's example and show the world God's character. It is through these acts of service that we can significantly impact the lives of those around us. Serving also means being willing to sacrifice our own interests for the sake of others. It's about understanding that the true divine purpose is fulfilled when we put others' needs above our own. An example of this is missionary work, where people dedicate their lives to helping needy communities, bringing not only material aid but also the message of God's love. This type of service requires a humble heart and a willingness to follow God's call, even when it involves personal sacrifices. By serving with humility, we become instruments of the divine purpose, reflecting God's love in every action. Living by faith and trusting in God. Living by faith and trusting in God is an invitation to let go of control and fully depend on Him. Think of a trapeze artist who fully trusts the safety net below them. Living by faith is having that same trust in God, knowing that He is in control and will take care of us. This means trusting God not only in good times but also in challenges and uncertainties. Faith is the foundation that sustains us, allowing us to face any situation with courage and hope. Trust in God is manifested in both the small and big decisions of life. When we seek God's guidance before making an important decision, we show our dependence on Him. A practical example is praying and seeking divine direction before changing jobs or making a significant financial decision. By doing this, we demonstrate our faith and trust that God knows what is best for us. This practice of trusting God in all areas of life gives us peace and assurance that we are on the right path. Living by faith also means patiently waiting for God's timing. Many times, we want immediate answers, but faith teaches us to trust in God's perfect timing. Think of Abraham, who waited many years to see God's promise fulfilled in his life. He trusted and remained faithful, even when the circumstances seemed impossible. So, when we face challenges and uncertainties, we must remember that God has a divine purpose and a perfect plan for each of us. Faith gives us the strength to keep going, trusting that God is in control and that His plan is always the best. Loving your neighbor as Christ loved us. Loving your neighbor as Christ loved us is the commandment that sums up all others. Jesus taught us that love for our neighbor is the purest expression of love for God. Think of a doctor who, even when tired, continues to care for patients with dedication and compassion. This is the kind of love that Christ called us to demonstrate, a sacrificial, unconditional, and grace-filled love. Loving your neighbor means being willing to forgive, help, and understand, even when it's not easy. This love is manifested in concrete and practical actions. Imagine helping an elderly neighbor with groceries or offering your time to listen to someone going through difficulties. These simple gestures can have a profound impact on people's lives. Jesus showed us through His actions that true love is not just words but attitudes that transform lives. By loving our neighbor, we are reflecting God's character and fulfilling our divine purpose. Loving your neighbor also involves promoting justice and equality. It's about standing up for the oppressed and raising a voice for those who have none. A practical example is getting involved in social causes that promote human dignity, like anti-hunger campaigns, social inclusion projects, or peace movements. These acts of love and service show that we are committed to making a difference in the world, following Christ's example. It is through this unconditional love that we can bring hope and God's light to those who need it most. Now that you've discovered what God expects from you, it's time to apply this knowledge in your life. Think about the areas where you can show more love to God, love your neighbor, pursue holiness, and live by faith. How can you serve others with humility and find your divine purpose? Take an honest analysis and start acting. For example, how about dedicating daily time to prayer, helping someone in need, or studying more about biblical principles? What steps are you willing to take to draw closer to God and live according to what He expects from you? Leave a comment sharing your ideas and experiences. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And if you want to learn more about biblical prophecies, click on the video that appears on the screen.